Right, so let's begin with this particular exercise, this particular bank recon. The bookkeeper of Adelaide Traders was busy working with the bank reconciliation for the month of August 2011 when she fell ill. The owner has asked you to please help him by completing the reconciliation process. The bookkeeper has already compared the bank statement with the cash journals. So that comparison between the cash journals, our records, or what we can call internal records, right? The cash journal, internal, because remember we prepared the cash journal, is already compared to the bank statement, which is obviously an external set of records. So that bit has been done. Right, then we are given information. Okay, so immediately information taken from the bank reconciliation statement on the 31st of July, which is the previous month. Okay, so if we look at the previous month, we started off with an unfavorable balance as per bank statement. Then there was one outstanding deposit. Okay, and as you can see, there are 4 outstanding checks. Okay, so there's 4 outstanding checks, and then balance as per bank account, in other words, general ledger, is not given. So clearly at some stage we're going to have to calculate that. Then the bookkeeper found the following differences between the bank statement and the cash journal. So here are all the differences, and in a moment we're going to obviously read through this information and reconcile our records with the bank's records. Right, so looking at the information, right, which we've just done, let's now look at what is required. So they want you to calculate the updated amounts for the CRJ, the CPJ, okay. Then they want you to prepare a bank general ledger account, which we're going to do together. And then finally, complete the bank reconciliation statement as at or on the 31st of August. Okay. Right, now guys, please remember when you are completing bank recon, it is not possible for you to complete, for example, the entire CRJ, then move on to the CPJ. That's not possible, right? Because remember, as you come across the information, it could go either into the CRJ or into the CPJ, or it could go into the bank reconciliation statement. So in other words, as you're doing question 1, you might end up moving to question 3. Or as you're doing question 2, you may have to go back to question 1. So please bear that in mind. Right, so I'm going to now begin with the previous month's bank recon statement. So that's my starting point, okay, the previous month's bank recon statement, and I'm going to work in this order. So I want to first calculate what is the balance as per my bank account general ledger on the 1st of August. So as I've said, that is my starting point. As I read through the information, I will go and fill in wherever it is relevant on the answer sheet, but not necessarily in the order of the answer sheet. Okay, so let's begin. Balance as per bank on the 1st of August. So remember, you started off with an unfavorable balance of 9,630, and I'm going to put a minus next to that. So a negative 9,630. An outstanding deposit, so obviously a deposit increases your bank balance. So next to that 12,700, as you can see, I've put a plus. Then we've got 4 outstanding checks. Now remember guys, a check decreases your bank balance. So each of these amounts obviously is going to reduce our bank balance. Right, so if I had to write this down, right, I've got a negative 9,630 plus 12,700. I know you guys can see this, but I'm just rewriting it for you. Minus 800, minus 1,250, minus 2,100, and then finally minus 1,975. Right, so let's get our calculator out and let's now work this amount together. Let me just move that so you guys can see. Okay, so I'm starting off with a negative, right, 9,630. To this, I am adding 12,700, the outstanding deposit, and minus each outstanding check. So minus 800, minus 1,250. Then I'm going to subtract 2,100, and then finally, let's fix that, minus 1,975, and that gives me a balance of 3,033, and as you can see, it's negative. Okay, so a negative balance of 3,055. Okay, so that gives me my opening balance in my general ledger. So if I go to my general ledger, right, so let's just quickly draw up a general ledger. Okay, so calculate or complete the general ledger account. So bank, okay, let's just fix that. So bank, obviously bank is a liability. So on the credit side, on the 1st of August, I have a balance brought down, an opening balance of 3,055. Let's just double check that that was the amount. Yes, it was 3,055. Okay. Right, so the first bit of information sorted, right? So this bit of information sorted for now. Let's now move on to the rest of the differences. The bookkeeper found the following differences between the bank statement and the cash journals. So the very first difference, the following entries from the August bank statement did not appear in the cash journals for August. So in other words, it's already in the bank statement, but for some reason, it's not in our cash journals for the month of August. It's not in our records. Right, the first bit of information, a payment of 2,100. So again, it's in the bank statement, but it's not in our records. A payment of 2,100. On further investigation with the bank, it was discovered that this amount was for the account of Adelaide Fashions. Okay, so on the bank statement, there is a payment of 2,100. So now we're thinking, where did this payment come from? Because we did not issue a check for 2,100. It's not in our journals. And then we say, hang on, this was for Adelaide Fashions. Now remember, our business, the name of our business is Adelaide Traders. And obviously, this was for another business called Adelaide Fashions. So clearly, the bank has made an error. We didn't make this particular error, but by mistake, the bank deducted 2,100 Rand from our account. This was not a payment made by our business. Right, so immediately think about this logically. You're going to obviously inform the bank. You're going to phone the bank. You're going to tell the bank, hang on, you guys have taken money from our account in error. Now remember, you cannot go and fix the bank's records. The bank will have to do that. They will have to rectify their mistakes. However, on the bank reconciliation statement, you are then going to make a note of this error. Okay, so it's an error made by the bank. You cannot fix the bank's mistakes. They've got to do that, right? But on the bank reconciliation statement, you are going to make a note of this error. So let's go to the bank reconciliation statement. And on the bank reconciliation statement, right, normally the details, most of the details will be filled in for you. So watch how I'm working, guys. On the second line from the bottom, right, I'm going to tell the bank to correct amount incorrectly that was debited. So correct amount incorrectly debited. In other words, put the money back into our account. And the amount was obviously 2,100. Remember, credit means they need to now put the money back into your account in their records. Right, so the first error that we came across sorted. Let's now move on to the next difference or the next error. So this one here sorted. Right, then we've got a stop order for 1,900 Rand for insurance of the business's premises. So once again, it's in the bank statement, but not in our records. Now remember guys, a stop order is basically permission given to the bank to pay the insurance company on a monthly basis. So you don't have to physically pay the insurer. You obviously instruct the bank to do this. So as you are looking at the bank statement, you obviously will come across the payment that was made to the insurance company. And obviously this is an additional cash payments journal entry. Okay, so cash payments. Right, I'm just going to leave one line open, and on the second line, details will be insurance, and there was an additional payment made for an amount of 1,900, obviously for insurance. Okay, so that one's quite straightforward. Right, let's tick this. So this is done. Let's now move on to 1.3. Okay, so again, in the bank statement, there is a deposit of 12,700 and they're not giving us any further details. Now remember, if it doesn't appear in the month of August CRJ, you've got to look at the previous month's bank reconciliation statement. So was this deposit outstanding? Has the bank now reflected this amount of 12,700, the outstanding deposit? So let's check, right? So on the bank statement, there is an amount of 12,700 Rand as a deposit. And if we go to the previous bank recon, there was an outstanding deposit of 12,700. So remember, last month, for some reason, it didn't appear, it didn't reflect on the bank statement, but this month, it's obviously reflecting. It could be because of a difference in date where the money was deposited. Right, so all we have to do is simply tick this off. Remember, you're not going to re-enter the 12,700 in your CRJ. You simply tick off the 12,700. It was outstanding last month. The bank has now acknowledged receiving this money. Okay, right, let's move on to 1.4. Debit order of 2,450 Rand in favor of the municipality for rates. So once again, stop order, debit order, guys, there's a very small difference between the two. It's still an instruction to pay. So again, you're not going to physically go to the municipality and stand in queues and pay rates. You rather have a debit order going through your account. So that 2,450 Rand is simply an additional CPJ entry, very similar to 1.2. Okay, so let's fill that into our CPJ. So I'm just going to write down rates as details, and that amount 2,450 in our cash payments journal. Right, let's now move on. Okay, so this sorted. Where are we? Okay, so we've sorted that. Let's do one more transaction and then we can take a quick break. So 1.5, check 369 for 1,795 Rand. So remember, once again, it's on the bank statement. And on the bank statement, there is a check appearing, check number 369 for an amount of 1,795. Now, immediately, guys, that check number should ring a bit of a bell. It should tell you, hang on, wasn't that check outstanding in the previous month? Remember, last month we had 4 checks that were outstanding, and immediately I notice here is check number 369. So let's read on. This check was issued to a creditor, Metro Suppliers. The amount that appeared in the bank statement is correct. Now, if we look closer, let me just quickly erase this so you guys can actually see. Let's just get rid of that. There we go. Right, so if we look at check number 369, in our records, the check was entered as 1,975. So in other words, when we entered this in our CPJ, we entered the amount as 1975. However, the amount on the bank statement is correct. So in other words, this amount here is correct. We obviously entered the amount incorrectly. So it could be the accountant was busy having his tea or his coffee or whatever the case may be, and by mistake, obviously the accountant's only human, he could have by mistake typed, right? Maybe he was doing this on Excel or ACPAC or whatever accounting software. He typed in 1975. So remember guys, if we make a mistake, we need to fix our error. Similarly, if the bank makes an error, we inform the bank, we make a note of the error, but we cannot fix the mistake. So whoever made the mistake, you've got to fix the mistake. So in this case, we are at fault, right? So I'm trying to draw a sad face there, guys. Just forgive me with my drawing. I know it's not that good, but we made the mistake. So we now need to fix our records. So if we look at our check, we can clearly see we've written too much. So in other words, we ended up overstating. We wrote too much in our CPJ. So let's quickly check how much we've overstated by. So remember, it should have been 1,795, but by mistake, we entered 1,975. So minus the correct amount, 1,795. Okay, so we overstated the check by 180. So remember, if you've written too much in the CPJ, the only way to fix this, you can't delete it. The only way to fix this, you've got to now make an entry in the CRJ. So that is how you're going to fix your error. Right, so in the CRJ, okay, I'm just going to leave one line for the opening totals, which I haven't brought down. 180, and obviously this check was issued to a creditor. Okay, so creditors control, and the check was overstated. You don't have to write that down. I'm just writing it down as an explanation. Okay, let's now move on to the next difference, which is 1.6. There's a deposit of 16,500 Rand, which included a fixed deposit that matured and interest of 1,500. Right, so once again, remember, this appears in the bank statement. Now, if you look at that 16,500, it includes the fixed deposit and the interest. Now, because I am not doing a CRJ, as in a proper cash receipts journal with proper amounts filled in as well as details recorded, I can just focus on 16,500. Remember, you can break this up into 15,000, which is the fixed deposit, and the 1,500, which is the interest. But what I'm doing is I'm going to show it as the entire amount. So it appears in your bank statement. You are now going to show this in your CRJ. So let's do that. So if we go to our CRJ, right, in the CRJ, there is a deposit of 16,500, and obviously this was for the fixed deposit and the interest. As I said earlier, you can show this as two separate amounts. I'm going to show it as one. Now, you guys would have noticed Okay, if you probably spotted this already, I've brought down totals which I actually forgot to do at the beginning. These totals were already included in the answer sheet, so it's not coming from the information booklet. Okay, so just in case you guys are wondering, where are these totals coming from? Okay, not anything magical, guys. I filled it in. Right, so let's now move on to the next entry or the next transaction. So 1.7, an unpaid check of 2,500 Rand. This check was received from a debtor in settlement of his account of 2,550. Now, please remember, grade 12s, when you're doing a bank recon and if there is an RD check, most times it's from a debtor, please only focus on the check amount, not the amount that the debtor owed. So obviously, this particular debtor owed the business 2,550. We gave him a discount of 50 Rand. Now, if you were doing financial statements, you would have to cancel the discount. But remember, when you're doing a bank recon, your only focus is the check itself. So in other words, I don't need this amount, nor do I need the discount. I only need the amount for the unpaid check. So that amount of 2,500, remember I thought I received the money. I put it into my CRJ. I thought I received the money, but now the bank is telling me, sorry, the guy doesn't have money in his account. So I've got to now cancel this entry in the CPJ. RD checks from a debtor. Okay, so in your CPJ, an amount of 2,500. Okay, so 2,500, only the amount of the actual check, not the discount, 2,500. And if you write in details, remember it would be debtor's control. Okay, normally in the exam, they're not too fussy about filling in details as long as you're filling in the amount. So just be aware of that. Right, let's carry on. Okay, let's try and find the right page. There we go. Right, 1.8, cash deposit fee 130 Rand, service fees 250 Rand, and then interest on debit balance. So remember, in the bank statement, debit is obviously an overdraft, or debit is unfavorable. Please remember that. Debit, overdraft, or unfavorable. So I'm going to show these as separate entries. So 113 plus the 250. Okay, I know I could do this without a calculator, guys, but it's quite late and I prefer not to make a mistake. I want you guys to also remember to do that in your exam, right? So the amount for my bank charges 363. So let's fill that in our CPJ because it's obviously a payment. So I've got bank charges, right, in my CPJ an amount of 363. And then I've also got interest on overdraft, or interest on unfavorable balance. Debit balance, remember, is unfavorable. And the interest that the bank is charging me for this particular month is an amount of 109. So let's fill that in, an amount of 109. Okay, right, let's now move on. Okay, almost done, guys, with the journals. Right, now let's look at some of the differences picked up in terms of the previous month's bank reconciliation statement. So check number 201. So immediately I want to alert you guys. So the previous month, check number 201 was outstanding for 800 Rand. So let's read on. Check number 201, 800 Rand, did not appear in the August bank statement. This check was issued to a creditor on the 15th of February 2010. I think that's a mistake. That should actually be 2011. Just a typo there, guys. Let's just fix that. 2011. Right, now what does this mean? So remember guys, an outstanding check simply means I have issued the check, but for some reason the payee who the check was issued to has not taken the check and cashed the check. Okay, so in this particular case, J. Lurie for some reason has not cashed the check, which is an amount of 800 Rand. Now remember, normally the business or whoever the business issues the check to will have 6 months to go and cash the check, to go and deposit the check into their bank account. So whatever reason, J. Lurie, could be he lost the check or misplaced the check or whatever the reason is, he has not cashed the check. Now after 6 months, that check becomes stale. So stale, not as in stale bread, but basically stale, we cannot cash the check anymore. Okay, so this check for 800 Rand basically now needs to be removed from your CPJ. And remember, you're going to cancel this check by making an entry in the cash receipts journal, in the CRJ. Okay, right, so that 800 Rand in our CRJ, that is where we're going to now show the 800 Rand that was obviously issued to J. Lurie, a creditor. I think it was a creditor, I'm not too sure. Okay, so the details, obviously you're going to fill in, yeah, it was a creditor, so you would fill in creditor's control. Okay, but more importantly, if a check is more than 6 months, in this case, issued on the 15th of February, remember we're now on the 31st of August. So 6 months, 15th of Feb, by the 15th of August, if you count, that should be 6 months, 15th Feb to the 15th of August. So once you hit the 15th of August, it's sorry J. Lurie, you cannot cash this check anymore. This check is now stale. Right, let's now move on to the next entry. Check 351 was issued to a supplier, Speedy Stores, on the 18th of August 2011. They have informed us that the check seems to be lost in the post. The check must now be stopped and a new check, check number 876, must be issued to replace it. Okay, right, so let's see what's going on here. So check number 351. So if we go back to our previous bank recon, and again, I'm just going to have to quickly erase because you guys probably cannot see this. Right, so let's get a pen out. Right, so check number 351. Okay, so this particular check for 2,100, it was issued, however, the check got lost in the post. So we now need to cancel the check and then we're going to have to issue a new check. So let's start off with canceling the check. So remember guys, a check that is lost, you obviously going to cancel the check also in the CRJ. So let's do that first. Let's go to the CRJ. Just want to quickly check the amount on the check. It was 2,100. Again guys, I know I write all over the place and you can't see the amount. So there we go. There's that amount for 2,100. Okay, so that 2,100 needs to be cancelled. So in our CRJ, 2,100, and we were then told we need to issue a new check. So the new check, it's also for 2,100, and obviously because it's a new check, I'm just going to make a note that this check will also be an outstanding check. So remember, because the check has just been issued, obviously they don't have time to go and cash the check. It wouldn't have appeared in the bank statement. So this check for 2,100 will also be an outstanding check in our bank reconciliation statement. In fact, we can actually write it now before we forget about it. So let's go to our bank reconciliation statement. Let's just quickly check the actual number for this new check. So the check number 876, I just want to fill that in. So in our bank reconciliation statement, right, at the bottom, so we've got outstanding check number 876, and remember all outstanding checks will go on the debit side 2,100. Okay, I'm not filling in the details outstanding check yet, but I know that that is the check number. Okay, right, let's move on. We don't have that many transactions left, so we should be close to the end of the transaction. So this is now done and dusted. Right, let's now move on to information 3. The following entries appear in the cash journals for August, but not on the bank statement. So remember, it's already in our records, it's in the cash journals, but it's not on the bank statement. So we now need to show these amounts as being outstanding in the bank reconciliation statement. So outstanding in your bank reconciliation statement. So the first one is a check, so an outstanding check, check number 870 for 1,462. Then I've got another check, check 873, for 2,950. And then finally, an outstanding deposit. Now, before I fill in my outstanding checks, I just want to go back to the bank recon the previous month to see whether or not I've sorted every check. So remember, check number 800 was sorted out, right? Check for 2,100 was sorted, and the check for 1,975 was sorted. So clearly, this check is still outstanding. So I've got to first fill in check number 310. So I'm going to do that first. Okay. So check number 310. 310. And the amount for that check was 1,250. And now I can record the two other outstanding checks. Okay. Right, so I've got check 870 for 1,462, check number 873 for 2,950. So let's enter that in as well into our bank recon statement. Okay, so I've got check number 870, and this was for 1,462. And then I've also got check number 873, and this was for 2,950. Right, and this is outstanding checks. Okay, right, that is sorted. Let's now fill in. Okay, so let's go back. We've got an outstanding deposit, and that outstanding deposit was for an amount of 13,187. So let's fill that in quickly. Outstanding deposit. So one line above. Okay, outstanding deposit. Okay, and remember, outstanding deposits will go on the credit side of your bank reconciliation statement, and that amount 13,187. I just want to quickly double check that. It was 13,187. Let's just quickly check and make sure. Yeah, it was 13,187. Right, and then finally, before we start adding up, information 4. The bank statement for August 2011 showed an overdraft of 7,995. So remember, this will go as a debit balance in our bank reconciliation statement. So on the debit side, okay, I've got a debit balance, or you can just write down balance as per bank statement. Okay. And a debit balance, in other words, an overdraft of 7,995. Right, so what's left for me to do? Obviously, all I now need to do is complete my journals and then complete my general ledger bank account. So we've got enough time to do that. So let's total our CRJ first. Okay, and hopefully you guys are going to add with me and just check that I'm not making any mistakes. So I've got 52,054, and I'm obviously adding 180 plus 16,500 plus 800 and then plus 2,100, and that should give us an amount of 71634. So 71634. Let's now do the same for the CPJ. So let's total the cash payments journal. Okay, and when we total the CPJ, let's just quickly clear that. So we started off with an opening total of 59,627. We are now adding 1,900 plus 2,450 plus 2,500, okay, plus the bank charges 363, and then finally, there's two more figures, plus the interest 109, and then finally the 2,100, and that should give us a total for our CPJ 69,049. So 69049. Okay, right, so that's done. Let's now complete the bank account. So looking at bank, obviously bank is a liability. I always like to remind myself a liability increases on the credit side, decreases on the debit side. So obviously my cash payments journal is going to increase my liability because I don't have money in my bank account, and my CPJ total, the total that we just filled in, 69,049. Okay, you can fill in total payments as your details, end of the month, the 31st of August, and cash receipts journal. Obviously, my overdraft decreases. Every time I deposit money into my account, my overdraft, I'm going to owe the bank less. So for this particular month, an amount of 71,634. Okay, total receipts. Now, normally, guys, in your grade 12 exam, they probably won't make you complete a bank account, but they'll ask you to do a calculation. I would always recommend you do the ledger account because obviously that's going to help you in terms of showing calculations. Okay, right, so looking at this particular balance, if we quickly balance this account, we are ending up, I think we still have an overdraft, so 69,049 plus 3,055, and that is giving us an amount of 72,104. Okay, I think we're going to end up, no, we still have an overdraft, okay, minus 71,634, and our bank balance, yeah, we still have an overdraft of 470. Okay, so that is our balance at the beginning of the next month, 470, when I balance this account. Right, so finally, guys, the moment of truth. So remember, right at the bottom, balance as per bank. And remember, this is your records general ledger. We've got a credit balance. If we go back, a credit balance of 470. So we can now fill that in. So on the credit side, an amount of 470. And that's when you start getting nervous because now it's got to balance. And if it doesn't balance, we made some kind of mistake. So hopefully we didn't, right? So let's quickly add up. Okay, so we're going to add up the credit side first. So we're starting off with 13,187 plus 2,100. Okay, and then plus 470. So we are ending up with an amount of 15,700. 757, and hopefully the debit side is going to give us the same total. So let's quickly check. Okay, so on the debit side, let's just try and move this. Right, so at the top we've got 7,995 plus 1,250, right, and then plus 1,462. Okay, we're then adding 2,950, and then finally plus 2,100. And hopefully it is going to balance, oh, it does, thank God, an amount of 15,757. Please remember, if you were taught to do the one column bank recon, don't stress, absolutely fine. So in that particular case, I'm just going to quickly show you because we've got about 5 minutes left. Right, so obviously you are using one column. So I know my columns don't look very straight, guys, but let's assume this is the column that I'm using. That's my one column. So I would start off my bank recon with a debit balance as per bank statement, in other words, a negative 7,995. So that is my balance as per bank statement. Remember, nothing stops you from putting this in brackets. If you put it in brackets, it is still negative. Remember that. Okay, so you can obviously use brackets. You don't have to put the minus sign in front. Then my outstanding deposit, obviously there's one outstanding deposit, and remember, a deposit increases your bank balance. So your outstanding deposit is positive. So I'm using the signs, but you don't have to put plus 13,187. Obviously, if you just write down 13,187, it is assumed it is positive. You guys know that. Right, then my outstanding checks, so obviously an outstanding check decreases your bank balance. So each outstanding check would either be in brackets or you would have it as negative. So you decide. So a negative 1,250. Then I've got 1,462. 2,950 also in brackets, and then finally 2,100 also in brackets. Okay, right, and then finally credit amount incorrectly debited. So remember, credit means put the money back into my account. So obviously that is positive. The 2,100, that amount is positive. Right, so when you now complete this, you should end up with the 470. So let's just quickly check. We've got a bit of time. Let's just make sure we do end up with that balance. I just want to move this up a bit. Okay, so remember, we're starting off with a negative 7,995. I want you guys to focus on this column that I've drew at the side of the screen. Right, then I've got positive 13,187. Just fix that, 187. Right, then I've got all my checks, which I have to subtract. So minus 1,250 minus 1,462. Okay, minus 2,950 minus 2,100, and then finally I'm obviously adding the 2,100. Right, and as you can see, I'm ending with my bank account a negative 470, which is the same amount that you would show. Okay.